So this whole incident with Jeff Bice Car's channel, which he's covered this story that was in the news where this guy's car accelerator pedal stuck. Well, his electronic car malfunctioned. So apparently he couldn't stop the car and it was going really, really fast. Apparently, but he claims it's happened to him before. He's claimed it's happened to him before. I've had some strange things happening in the van, like when I was parked up a few times, and also when I've just been driving and the engine's just gone and cut off. So like, and these are the electronic parts as well, like the engine just cut off while I was at the traffic lights in the middle of the road. And also indicators not working when you've got them on and things. But at this stage, what they've done is they've forced us, they've taken all the mechanical cars off us and they've forced us into electronic ones. And now they've got these malfunctions happening where we thought there was, I've been suspicious of, hacking into cars to cause accidents, but now they're doing it blatantly. I mean, this is like clearly obvious. But the thing, what I wanted to say, and I don't even know, I doubt that Jeff's probably going to listen to this because he's too busy. So I'm just making it just for records, basically. From the interview that Jeff gave with the victim of this incident, right? He didn't report that the police did any investigations on the vehicle or the police had any capacity to investigate the vehicle. Yet if you actually have an accident, they send out an entire investigation team. They send out an entire team to investigate, and then they get forensics out and everything. If you have an accident, is that an incident? Is that not an accident? If they had to make impact with the car, at least to stop it or slow it down. It sounds like it just got taken to a certain garage that it goes to have been looked at, a normal garage, and apparently they couldn't find or see a fault with it. So that means that it must have been, I think that's evidence that it was hacked and then put back to normal again. And then he said that the battery level was going down or playing up, but they couldn't get an electrician to look at it. So if the police don't have the capacity to investigate these things and are not investigating them, then it's impossible for them to find any hackers. And if the garage cannot find any fault on it, it doesn't seem like anyone's looking for any hackers. Now, it is the manufacturers who we know have got certain remote accesses to these vehicles, but the police don't even, it looks like the police aren't even going to the manufacturer. How can they, the thing is, while the police were on site, once they got to the motorway, while the vehicle was still being, while the vehicle wouldn't stop, while the acceleration was stuck on, you see the police, they've not got any computers, when the police car's near or next to the vehicle, there's nothing to scan the broadband to see, if there's any signals from various Bluetooth broadbands, other remote connections, and who's accessing them, and if they're actually accessing them from the actual manufacturer or from another place. They're not checking all these things. So why would you put electronic cars on the road that can have these malfunctions, and then you've got those ones blowing up as well at the airport, certain fires to do with batteries and so forth, so the police aren't equipped. So instead you've got this wild, crazy incident that's scaring people where it's actually a terrorist threat, because now everyone in the country who might want to oppose the police, because we've got bentcop.biz, corrupt police, Andrew Bridgen's even now written a letter to the police, concerns about, murder, corruption, perverting justice, all manner of things. And that's a serious letter from an MP now. But from what I know of the police, the illegal road signage and the intention to place it, And then you've got, just like 38 Degrees, going and painting Class F notices for petitions in the streets, and the council go and cleaning them off when they're not allowed to. That's a crime there, and that's a council committing an obvious crime when someone's observing them. So if a council can commit a crime that in law is illegal when even they're being filmed and it's on the internet, they send emails out to everyone, that's very concerning, because firstly, the police won't take action against the council when it's an obvious crime. Secondly, even when the Crown prosecution bring prosecutions like Max Hill, and they're prosecuting us when they're claiming we've done something wrong when we haven't, that's concerning. So, the Prime Minister really has got a ridiculous situation in the Home Secretary, because they've got a Mayor, Sadiq Khan, who is actually... They've been doing this cash for cars, trying to get normal mechanical cars off the road that rarely have that type of fault, if ever. And they're trying to get people into these cars. And now they're even in London finding people to try and take them off them to get them into these electronic vehicles. And then we're suddenly when we've all got these electronic vehicles, then we're getting terrorised by these incidents like, we all better behave or this could happen to us, So... this is the thing. We're actually being... and apparently there's no way the police can investigate as it's happening or when it's happened. So they're actually putting us in vehicles where they can be hacked by terrorists, and they don't even want to suspect it. The police haven't got the capacity to investigate it. But they put us in those vehicles when, we're better off without them. So... it seems rather ridiculous, and what I don't like about the whole incident is that it all goes on the statement of the individual. There was nothing recorded, there was no evidence from the car, what happened within the vehicle, other than his statement. So you have to 100% rely on his own statement, because he said that, once the police had started slowing him down, then the acceleration thing came off, but it was just going by the owner's vehicle speed then. He managed to get the handbrake wouldn't go out of gear. He couldn't get it into neutral, and he had to bash some buttons. But is there even any evidence that the police looked that he bashed the button to see that he had bashed it? Any scratches on it? He says that he to hit it and smash it until this light came on and try and get into this neutral position. But where's the evidence that he was bashing or hitting it hard enough? They haven't even done that. There's none of that. So it seems to me like anyone could claim that the vehicle's stuck on and go for a joyride and then phone the police up and say, oh, my vehicle won't slow down, and then, have a bit of a thrill ride, and then suddenly, it's gone into neutral now, and then, then you could just get out and the police say, and there's no actual proof. There's no proof for it. So anyone could say that. And I don't think Jeff covered any of those points. But then again, I suppose he was just getting the story out of him so we could all listen to it and evaluate it. And then, therefore, we can come up with these comments or whatever, whether or not he asked him thoroughly or not. But to that guy, it happened twice. But either he's a good hoaxer with balls of steel, or he's been targeted. I think that the van what I was driving was being targeted as well, like the engine going off. Also, when I was in Sainsbury's car park, it wouldn't turn on. It just wouldn't start up. I was turning the key and nothing happened. Just nothing. That has only happened very few times. Sometimes the car doors have gone off by themselves as well, just locked, which you don't want that to happen when the keys are inside it, for sure, or else you can't get in if the car door locks go off. There's also a function on the vehicle as well. If sometimes if there's something wrong with the engine, like if it's broken, right? If the diesel engine is broken, right? What you can do is when you turn the key to try and start the vehicle and turn the engine over to try and start it, right? If you turn the key, if you've got it out of gear, if you've got it in gear. If it's in gear, and if you lift the clutch. If the clutch is not down, right, and you turn the key, right, to try and start it, and if you press the accelerator, it propels forward. The vehicle actually propels forward on the power of the battery, not on the engine, not on the actual proper diesel engine ticking over. So there's like an assisted propulsion, like the on modern vehicles, part of the propulsion is, even on a diesel, this is not a hybrid, even on a proper diesel one, there's something in it that propels it forward, that runs on the electrics when you're turning it over. Just it's not very strong, it's quite weak. But if that can be accessed remotely, like, for example, making it not even turn on, or shutting it off, or indicators not working, or any of those electronical nuances that they're saying now can actually, there is such a thing as, remote access on these things, then that power from the battery, that can propel it forward, even if weakly, which I know exists on it, and if the manufacturers want to say that it doesn't, well, how come when you turn the key and it's in gear and put the accelerator down, even if it won't start, there's a very weak propulsion forward. So also, if you've got your handbrake on, right, if you leave it in, you can leave it in gear. Sometimes you have to leave it in gear if you're on a hill. It's safe to leave it in gear. If you're on a hill, right, or if you're facing uphill, sometimes, if your handbrake fails, it's safe to put it in first gear, because then, the gears lock the vehicle so it can't roll backwards. Or if you're facing downhill, leave it in reverse, and then if the handbrake goes, it won't roll off. Now, if you're on a completely flat road and handbrake's on, right, therefore you would have thought, well, it's impossible. Why would you leave it in first gear or in reverse if it's on a flat hill? Because if the handbrake fails, then it's not going to roll forward or backwards, because if you're not on a hill, so it's not. You wouldn't need to leave it in. Now, a lot of automatic cars have got a parking gear. It's called park, where you put it in park and it just locks it anyway, and that's separate to the handbrake, I think. But I actually believe that. Also, there's an electric component what can be tapped into, which is very weak. It's nothing like an electric vehicle. You can't drive on it. You can't drive anywhere on it realistically. But it's got this kind of very, very weak propulsion in it, and it's not a good idea to do it because it knackers the engine. When you're actually trying to turn the engine, if the fan belt's gone or something like that. It can mushroom these pistons, and it can actually ruin the engine. But what I'm saying is, there is a component in it, and it's connected to the electrical parts that will propel it forward, but very weakly. And that's not when your engine's ticking over. It's not even started properly, because you're trying to start it, you're like boom, 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 just turning over. So I think that, I don't know whether the manufacturers will admit it or not, but I believe that, particularly if it's in gear forward, if you put the handbrake on, I actually think that if it's on the flat, if you leave the vehicle, and if they can shut vehicles on and off. Now, obviously, the thing with a diesel is it's not officially started until you turn the key and the vehicle fires and turns over, and then it's running. What you call a running engine. It's actually got a running engine in a vehicle. The engine's running. But I think that the vehicles can be propelled forward when the engine is not running, even in the van, like the Mercedes vans and things like that. If it's in gear, obviously, if it's not in gear, it's not connected. But if it can turn over, if you can turn the engine over, but it's not started, and there's some forward propulsion coming, and it's from an electrical component that assists it, then that assisting electrical component surely can propel it forward without the engine running. But it can't if it's not in gear. So it'd have to be in forward gear, because you haven't actually engaged anything at all. Whatever you engage with the transmission is, what I'm saying is, there's an electrical assistance component to it. So that means that you could potentially leave your vehicle by itself, and if you've left it in gear, if they could get into the electrics remotely and just fire that electrical component that's a weak forward compulsion, there could be enough in it, to kind of set it rolling, or even move it, or set it rolling down, if you're on a hill or something like that. So I'm, they're not, but these things I haven't getting. I don't think I know of a case yet. I think there's one case where they had a hacker who hacked into a car in America and they proved that, but I don't know how they proved it. I don't actually know how they prove that. There doesn't seem to be in England any search for any signals or anything like that, and the signal would have to be on and engaged. And then, what about the memory of the vehicle? Like, what are the last communications that were made to the vehicle? I mean, the manufacturer, the garage was looking for a fault, but he wasn't looking at any of these, like, digital records for the engine, who was the last person who had remote access and all that kind of stuff. I think that's kind of beyond the garage's capacity. And I don't think the police, well, maybe the police did go to the manufacturer and wanted all kind of like records and, undisclosed data. But it doesn't sound like they are doing to me. And therefore, the thing is, if these terrorist attacks might have anything to do with the police remotely, then the person who's setting the police protocol and procedures and directing them is not directing them to do that, which means that they wouldn't discover who was connecting to it, or if there was. So it all seems coming from a higher incident management parameters and control. Now, I realised something. The word having cognizance over the matter in the courts means that a court has jurisdiction, but if you've got cognizance on the matter, it means that have you got the mental ability, like Columbo or Sherlock Holmes. Columbo has cognizance on the crime because he's able to cognise it, calculate it, work it out and solve it. Someone who wasn't an expert detective, like Columbo, for example, I know that's a TV programme, but it's an example, wouldn't have the capacity, they just wouldn't have the ability. It's like, have you got the cognizance of science? Have you got the cognizance of history? Have you got the privileged information? So someone who's got cognizance on the matter is someone with the a knowledge and ability to work it out and calculate it, and then even prosecute it. And you don't have to be a police officer for that. You could just be someone who a knowledgeable person. Now, we've all got the cognizance to work out that the London Council was scrubbing off those QR codes off the pavement, but we all had the cognizance for it, but we didn't have the legal capacity because, the police were going to take legal action against the council, and the council were going to take action against themselves. So who's going to take them to the courts? Who's going to prosecute? And the thing is, what do you prosecute them for? Well, there's the Statutory Instruments 2007, that's the act that they're violating. But the thing is that the petition, if there's any crimes or offences connected to elections, they're prosecuted with an election petition, right? The election's the election, the prosecution's called an election petition. So a petition's a petition, but if you prosecute a petition, what do you prosecute it with? Or if there's any offences connected to the petition, because that's what it was, the council were taking the petition things off, the pictures, the signs, the symbols, the painted signs off the pavement. So this is what the Tumultuous Petitioning Act was for. So it's like a petition. Well, really, the Tumultuous Petitioning Act the Tumultuous Petitioning Act was an act about petitioning. So it's for legal proceedings around petitions. That's why it's called the Tumultuous Petitioning Act. Well, that's why the Elections Petitions Act is called the Elections Petitions. So, but there are many things now that have been done illegal that we've got the cognizance to work out and calculate and report it, but the prosecuting authorities don't have the desire to prosecute or to bring charges, and that's the problem. And you know, I'm doing another video. It's about Sir Robert Peel. He invented the police force. He was the Home Secretary and leader of the opposition, and then he became Prime Minister and the Chancellor of the Exchequer. And this is when Parliament burned down, and they stopped having these these private hired police or private investigators, and this, like the Bow Street Runners and these thief takers and so forth. They actually then set up the proper police force. Although these Bow Street Runners were experimental, Parliament burned down, and it was actually the Chancellor of the Exchequer who directed. They had all these wooden like counting things, like these wooden instruments that you use to count with and calculate with. Like there was a lot of them, 2 cartloads of them, and they wanted to get rid of them. And the Chancellor of the Exchequer actually directed some people, clerks or servants, clerks, I guess, to put them, burn them underneath Parliament in a burner, right? And then the woman, she noticed a strange heat coming from the floor in Parliament when it was time to lock up, but she didn't really think too much about it. She just noticed there was a strange heat. Right? Well, she should have really investigated further. If she would have had cognizance of the situation, she would have discovered the fire, but she didn't, right? And then the next thing, people are, several hours later, they're calling it on fire. Parliament's on fire, and that's when the Parliament burned, and then we lose all the petitions, all the evidence of the petitions. Now, there are some very, very strange things with this case, because, firstly, Sir Robert Peel was born 1788. Now, that is astounding, because the Bill of Rights, for the right to petition, although people have been petitioning the whole time, but the Bill of Rights, which gives you the right to petition protection from prosecution, although, petitioning was gone on since the 1500s, they had records, but 1688 is an important time, the Glorious Revolution. Amazing. Peel was born in 1788, and the Bill of Rights was made in 1688. If you aren't a person in Parliament whose birthday is 1788 and don't think that, that's kind of cool, like 1688, 1788, Peel was from Bury, but he also invented the Conservative Party as well, which is like the Court Party. The Court Party was always the ministers, the ones who were actually got positions in Parliament, right? And the rest of the government were the ones who opposed, the ones who were actually in the government in positions, right? And that but they ended up becoming the Conservative Party. I think there was a Peelites Party after that. He went and had this Peelites Party, but he did start the Conservative Party. Now the thing is, if you want to do a crime, right, and not get found out, usually people, when there are crimes where people don't make efforts to not get found out, they just want to steal something and obtain it, so they've got it. They don't make good efforts to not get caught. Someone with cognizance over matters, right, has a knowledge. When you've got cognizance over a matter, it means that you have full mental understanding about what you're doing and how you're doing it and what's going to happen. And also, if certain people are, when someone's going to do something, what they're going to do, routines, you've got cognizance over their routines. You might even have command as well, or control. In fact, if you were the person who even commanded or ordered it in the first place, the events of Peel instructing or directing the clerk to even burn those counting things underneath Parliament means that he had not only cognizance of the situation but control over it. He was directing it. Peel was directing events. So, and also the thing is, if you had a chance, well, he says that it was the Prime Minister and Chancellor of the Exchequer at the same time. I don't know if they've changed how the roles work since then, how the different positions and roles work since then, but effectively, so it was the Prime Minister then. It seems rather ridiculous. Also, would he be having immunity from prosecution under privilege? But, if there's no police force at that time, or if they've only invented the police force, and if they have command of the police force, like really government do now, I think that they wanted to burn all those petitions. Now, there's one thing that I've realised about these petitions. Dr. Brodie Waddell, who's translated a lot of the petitions, he agrees that they did lose them all in the fire of Parliament. But luckily there was some other petitions that weren't stored in there from Quarter Sessions, House of Lords and Privy Council and so forth. Now, the thing is that, right, this is another thing. They say that in courts, right, if you win a certain case and, the case is recorded, the case sets a new precedence, right? So, but this only happens in the High Court. I thought that it happened from the Crown Court. I'm sure that a precedence happens in the Crown Court over the Magistrates' Courts. But suddenly they've started saying it doesn't. A precedence only happens in the High Court. I don't know how they've done it, but I'm sure that they've managed to erase and change that, because I can remember when they were citing cases from Crown Courts. You usually, many people do cite other cases as an example, even if it doesn't have a precedence. They cite it, like, I'll cite this case as an example, because all Crown Court cases are recorded, so usually they cite them as well. Because what happened with the national speed limit, with the vans, David Cameron was the Prime Minister, and then, he did a cup and ball trick, and then the next thing they were saying that the speed limit of the van is not the same as a car on the dual carriageway, single and dual. But I knew it was, because I'd been told it on speed awareness courses and read it. But then suddenly everyone was saying that it wasn't, and then when you looked at the internet, it said it wasn't. But then we pulled out my granddad's driving licence from 1993, which said that, a vehicle's not a goods vehicle unless it's over 3.5 tonnes in law. So David Cameron actually lied. He changed, and then the police followed suit with that. And this is why, when Robert Peel is the Chancellor of the Exchequer or the Prime Minister, the police are following suit. Why didn't they prosecute? I think that Robert Peel organised it. Ironically, when you look at his face from his paintings, who does he resemble or look like the most? I think he looks very similar to Keir Starmer in the face. He's got a very, very Keir Starmer-looking features about him, as this Sir Robert Peel. Ironically, apparently he fell off his horse on Constitution Hill from an injury when he apparently died when his horse fell on him, which doesn't say much for big horse statues around London, does it really? I don't know whether that's true or not, or whether it was just a reported story and he was under witness protection, God knows. But I think he was responsible. I think someone suspected him of it, and I won't be surprised if someone did something to his horse, or something like that, or even if he was under suspicion, so he had to disappear. Who were thinking of prosecuting him? I don't know, because you've got privilege that comes into it. But in the Prevention of Corrupt and Legal Practices Act from the 1800s, you can't use privilege for an excuse, which is ridiculous. That's ridiculous, because that means Peel. If Peel was under questioning, he wouldn't have been able to use privilege to get out of answering questions over it. But I don't think he was suspected. I think they just regard it as an accident, like, the clerk was the one who did the physical action of it. and he doesn't, he was instructed to do something. Was the clerk prosecuted for the burning down of Parliament, or is he let off for it being an accident? Was he under privilege of Parliament like the clerk? Because really, if you think about it, in that Lord Hanningfield case at Southwark Crown Court under Jeremy Johnson QC at the time, he said he was using the clerk for privilege. He was using an example of the clerk. He raised an example of the clerk, which I drew explicit attention to him raising the issue of the clerk in that with Lord Hanningfield. And then I thought, they're bringing the clerk into this privilege matter now. And I thought, well, that's interesting. They're using him as an example of Lord Hanningfield for his privilege basis, but I'm like, well, what about the clerk who was meant to have, has put the set of the Parliament in the burner? Did he have exclusive? Did he have, privilege? It's very suspicious. All this is just ridiculous. Like the police is invented by Sir Robert Peel, which is when the Parliament burned down and they're wanting to set up a proper police force. All the petitions got burned, and the thing is. So, if higher courts have a precedence over other cases, then that means that petitions to Parliament, which are a legal action, which gets a legal action from Parliament, if you get it action, sets a precedent for petitioning. For what cases can be petitioned, sets a precedent for what types of cases can't be petitioned, and what have and haven't been in the past. That's the precedent, because there's no more standing orders or Bill of Rights, and the Tumultuous Petitioning Act is being repealed. So what sets a precedent for what you can and can't petition about? Well, the Petitions Committee at the moment are rejecting a hell of a lot of petitions over these standards. Well, but their standards they're claiming standards means what you can and can't do, not basically what is readable and not readable, what is eligible in writing, what can you decipher. Well, you can't decipher anything until Dr. Brodie Waddle and his team translate the petitions into typing, because we all find it difficult to read people. In fact, I think people are finding it hard to read people's handwriting now. One person can't read another person's handwriting, let alone one from the 1800s only, even, unless we get someone to put it into typing. Unless you just write very plain and neat handwriting, and everyone can read their own handwriting. So, what the House of Commons petitions would have is a precedence of cases which you could challenge the petition committee with, what you can and can't bring anyway, and what cases can and can't be actioned and what have. But also a lot of the history of England, in things that have happened in England, like the draining of the Fens, evidence that, evidence of what happened in the Fens, when there were a lot of people rioting and protesting and lots of things about the draining of the Fens and about wages and things like that. We only know about that because of the casework of the petitions. It's a historic archive, although there will be other people who wrote about it as well, but that contributes towards it, at least in the legal side of it. Well, that is the legal case, it is a legal case. So it's the destruction of evidence. Actually, it's casework, evidence. Now, that's actually what 38 Degrees have done to me. I had 3 petitions running on 38 Degrees, and they took them down. They said that they accused me, of, whatever. There was, invalid signatures on there, but I didn't put them on there. An agent that I asked to help me promote it and get some signatures, asked people to sign. Because, by the way, this is not an election or a referendum. It's not sponsored by the state. They aren't running the procedure on our behalf. When you're petitioning, it's fully sponsored. You've got to go out of your way to ask people and try and get as much help as you can. It's a bit different from an election and a referendum, because that is the government are going to facilitate it fairly, equally, not that it's all like, you have to fund it yourself in order to get them to action it. So, I had to get all these signatures and get some promo for it and so forth, and then some of them apparently ended up being illegible. Well, 38 Degrees claimed they were, but they're not a court. And then they took my petitions down, but they agreed that, I got a refund, and it was agreed that, this person had ripped me off, this promoter, so I got a refund for that. But 38 Degrees won't put my petitions back up, but the petitions have actually got evidence attached to them, photographs, my statements and writing, and not just the signatures. The signatures are only evidence of public concern and support. That's only part of the evidence. Some of the evidence is actually my documents. So 38 Degrees took them off me. Well, that's a legal case to Parliament that I've got published. And this is why you've got to use subpoena, really, to compel the documents, which I've started to do now. I'll get into with the Judicial Conduct Office. But the thing is, you might say, well, why don't you go to the county court or to the High Court? Well, the thing is, if you've got a problem with a legal case that exists, then it's meant to be the House of Commons Committee, who they're the authority who are dealing with it, and they're not giving any casework support. So I've got to complain about them to the Judicial Conduct Investigations Office, complain about the Petitions Committee, which is through representations with the House of Commons through the Constitutional Reform Act 2005, Section 5. So I've got to complain about 38 Degrees and get a subpoena from to put my petitions back up and even have legal action against 38 Degrees. It's in connection with my petition. So if you're prosecuting an election, you prosecute it with an election petition. But what you do if some people have intervened in the legal proceedings of your petition, House of Commons petition, like 38 Degrees have stolen the evidence. Well, you need a petition. Well, who would bring a petition? Well, the Petitions Committee, surely, because they're the ones with cognizance over it. They're the ones with jurisdiction. They're the ones with Standing Orders 145A3 who can subpoena documents and compel and summon, but they're not giving remotely anywhere near that kind of support. And they're also lying about procedures anyway, and what even cases you can and can't bring, of which the archives from the House of Commons would prove this because they set the precedence for it. I think Robert Peel burned down the House of Commons and he had cognizance over the full affairs and comings and goings of Parliament, and I believe that he orchestrated it, and they were able to, because they were not only having cognizance over the entire affairs, and they had the privilege of certain informations, they also had parliamentary privilege to not only be protected from prosecution, but I don't think if they'd have been prosecuted with the Corrupt Practices Act, I don't think that they would have been able to use privilege to evade answering questions. But what would you do with those people? Judges get removed if they found. Judges can be prosecuted and found guilty, but they just get removed. I don't think that they get imprisoned. So I don't know what you do to. Well, would you can have impeachment. An impeachment by Parliament cannot be pardoned. Barons and Lords can only be fined by the equals, but after Magna Carta, they can't. I don't think Barons and Lords can only be fined by their equals without Magna Carta. But according to Article 9 of the Bill of Rights, illegal prosecutions by the King's Bench for matters that are only debatable and decidable by Parliament. Well, those are the petitions, right? But a criminal case in a criminal court might not. Parliament decides cases that have been brought to it in the first place, chosen to be brought to it, and political matters can only really be decided by Parliament. But, so why the Supreme Court end up actually now interested in this Jeremy Johnson QC, or now he's called Jeremy Johnson Casey representation for Lord Hanningfield, because Jeremy Johnson KC has claimed that, Lord Hanningfield couldn't be prosecuted by the criminal court, that, he's got privilege protection. But he had been previously prosecuted, so why didn't they call that before or use it before he'd even been to prison, right? So they didn't believe that he had it before, until I brought up the 1688 Bill of Rights issue and started heavily promoting it. Now, Judge Jeremy Johnson, in his legal statement, he doesn't use the Magna Carta in it. He only uses the Article 9 of the Bill of Rights, which is actually meant to be for us petitioning, right? Now, the parliamentary privilege is really, really important. Apparently you can have impeachments by Parliament. But this is the thing. This is one thing that I can pull Jeremy Johnson KC on, is that if the House of Lords hasn't got judicial authority for criminal cases anymore, only for political matters, only the Supreme Court, then Parliament doesn't have cognizance over the matter anymore, only the Supreme Court does. For the Lords, in criminal matters, only the Supreme Court does. Now, why didn't the Crown Prosecution Service prosecute Lord Hanningfield in the High Court or the Supreme Court in the first place? And according to that Corrupt and Illegal Practices Act, you can't use privilege to evade answering questions in proceedings, and you can even be found guilty, but apparently people get removed from positions. They don't get put in prison or fined, according to that act, from what I can gather, although I do need to read it in more detail, but that's the basis of it. And they're saying that the House of Lords they're claiming they don't have or exercise jurisdiction in criminal matters anymore. It's the Supreme Court, or in any legal matters. So I don't know if Jeremy Johnson KC was right of Parliament having cognizance or jurisdiction. They likely have cognizance and jurisdiction over Hanningfield's work, for his work, right? And what he can and can't do. It's not for the courts to decide what work of Parliament is. You know, because he was getting... They were accusing him of claiming money when he wasn't entitled to it, right? But the whole basis of the whole thing is that, the Lords can decide what is and isn't their work, not the courts, right? But so that's got nothing to do with, So that's the thing, and this is the thing with police, who's to say, what is required in a police officer's work or not, if he's required to go into a house, if it's a crime or not, But the law has got lots of things that you can and can't do, but it's all arguable and debatable and reasonable, what's reasonable force. Well, this is the thing, who says what is and what is not reasonable. It depends whether you want to challenge it or not. When you go to court, you're actually challenging someone on something, So what Jeremy Johnson KC is claiming that no one can even challenge him on it or look into it. Not to say that Parliament can't say, this is, within our work or not. But the whole basis of the Corrupt and Legal Practices Act is that you can actually challenge it, and some judges decide. But is it going to be Jeremy Johnson KC? And the fact is, if it's like, if you're petitioning Houses of Commons or Lords with a case, then obviously they're the one who've decided, it's between the person bringing the case and the court, what you do and don't need to do with that court. I think that's the thing. So with Lord Hanningfield, it's between him and Parliament. But the thing is, I think that the CPS really could have brought the case to the High Court or the Supreme Court in the first place, not to the Crown Court, and then you wouldn't have had that situation. So, it was that whole thing staged. And then the Lords could decide Lord Hanningfield, and it probably would have gone something along the lines of the election petition trial where, he has to answer questions and can't use privilege. That's kind of where I am with it now. There's just one thing I've got to check out. I've got to check out in Jeremy Johnson's paper, he refers to an other paper that someone else wrote, which set out some kind of earlier precedents, and he just added to it. So I've got to read that to see which statute law that refers to. Now, because of the conduct of David Cameron lying about the speed limit on the vans and doing it kind of really in retribution, in revenge, and because of the councils blatantly doing stuff now in open broad daylight that's illegal, and yet we're reporting it and nothing's getting done, and then, you know, even Max Hill, the leader of the Crown Prosecution Service at the time, can illegally bring things. We've got serious corruption issues, and now we're even getting on to, like, local council authorities who are not supposed to influence electors. Members of local councils now are appearing under their title, councillor, CLLR, councillor, and they are influencing elections, which is my latest complaint to the Judicial Conduct Investigation Office about Bromley Council chairperson in the council, because I think the Conservative Party now are trying to get into and use the power of these big Facebook groups in order to influence electors. Well, they are, because the councillors are turning up under their title, CLLR, and actually you can't advise on an election because you're influencing it if you advise on it. You know, you can't advise on an election because you're influencing it, you know. So, I mean, I think that Parliament was burned down by either the King, William IV, was it? Because, you know, he spent a lot of time at sea, not actually in the country. He spent a hell of a lot of time at sea. And there are some things in the paintings and pictures that someone painted of him, like this little thing on the table that looks like a burning fuse and things like that. I know that these clues are like, you know, they can be used as evidence, but then the evidence still has to be, you know, considered whether it's beyond reasonable doubt or not. There are clues, let's say that. There were clues. Even the badge that he wore, this kind of like silver star. I don't know what it's called. I need to research it. That's the badge that ends up being the badge of police. You know, like, you know, the sheriff badge. I think that it was this William and Sir John Peel who. I think that it was all arranged, and they burned the Parliament down like as a terrorist kind of attack, and I think that it probably going on before then, a long time before then, maybe even, you know, the gunpowder plot, but maybe that was a propaganda story. But if the police force proper were formed with Sir John Peel, and the police force were formed around circumstances of a man who formed them, the Metropolitan Police, and this is when Parliament burned down and we lost all the petitions and the case precedent, the evidence of all these cases, the main body of the House of Commons petitions, let's say, at least, possibly going even back into the 1500s, which would have been some critically important evidence that we need now to help prove the right to petition based on what it is and what people were doing and what cases can and can't be heard. You know, this is it. And Dr. Brodie definitely confirmed that they've burned in the fire now. So, all these incidents now, I'm going to link this back to this Jeff Bice car incident, you know, with the, car going out of control, and then other incidents like the fire at Luton Airport and the battery, things like this. I'm not saying every single one of them, but I know for certain since I started the BentCup.biz investigation, well, I found police corruption. I found the police have been putting illegal road signage out with the councils together, and then when I reported it, they won't give the fines back, and I tried to cover it up. That's a corrupt and illegal practice and a prosecution there, regardless whether it doesn't matter whether the fines were or were not able to be given. The fact is, the road signage was unlawful. This sign is unlawful. The status of the sign itself, without even getting onto any fines, you don't even need to fine anyone. You don't even need to have anyone driving down the road in a car who's there to be prosecuted. You could have, the whole country could be evacuated, right? But if illegal road signage is in place, let's say there's no one in England, right? And let's say you've got law in effect where you have to put the road signage up and it has to be a certain way or it's illegal, right? That signage has been put up illegally. Its status is illegal. It says this all the way through the highways manuals and the law. Someone committed an offence by putting up unlawfully, and also if it hasn't got any identity on the back of it. Now, the police are also supposed to go out and survey it as well. You don't even have to have any cars driving past for that. Now, if the council put up illegal road signage, that's a corrupt and illegal practice. And if the police failed to report it and even aided them and abetted them without one car driving past, that's an illegal and corrupt practice. So the Met Police Chief, Matt Rowley, has got a serious problem because you don't need one fine. You don't even need one car to drive past, right? And this is the problem. It's a corrupt and illegal practice. But it is actually misleading drivers and it is actually misleading people into fines, and they are getting unlawful fines out of it. I'm afraid that with the evidence of David Cameron as well, with the driving licences, the 1993 DVLA licence, which proves, and I know that, they were acknowledging that the speed limit on the van was 70 mile an hour, not 60, same as a car on a dual carriageway. This is the Prime Minister of England, David Cameron. So this is evidence. Local council authorities as well, doing things legally. I think we've got an inherited terrorist arm of government. It's terrorism. And what they're doing is, it's kind of like, when the people, complain, they protest and so forth. When the government complain, they do actions as well. But their actions are, because they're in a position where they're in command of the authorities and the police, and they've got certain privileges they're throwing around, and they've got cognizance because of their information, they've got the ability to oversee everything and know how everything's overseen and know everyone's schedules and times and the whole thing. No one else has. Everyone's at work all day, and we're all poor. We can't afford to, plan crimes. But yet, the Irish government are like, we want access to people's computers, to make sure they're not planning on plotting crimes. It all from the start. This is the government. And I think that, unfortunately, it is BentCup.biz, Sir Robert Peel, and William IV. I think that we've got terrorists. It's unfortunately, it's actually the king and the possibly some of the lords. I'm not saying they're all in on it. They've got oppositions, but I think they wanted to destroy all the archives of Parliament and scare people, frighten them, and it couldn't have been more relevant, the creation of the police force, and all the petitions get burned. It's a miracle that the 1688 Bill of Rights didn't get burned, if they didn't have other copies of it, and so forth, I don't think they could, it's a miracle they haven't repealed it. But I don't think the people will put up with it, You see, I don't think they would have been able to repeal it because there would have been uproar and more revolution, you see, but it's burned down. It's almost like, if we can't have it, no one can have it type thing. I think it was an act of kind of self-harm and destruction, and also when people have got immunities and privileges and they can bring cases and instruct, you got these common informers. You had these common informers as well. After 1688, you got these common informers who were actually, there were certain offences which were like very, very petty crimes, like, opening on a Sunday or things like that. And the police weren't going to bother, bothering prosecuting things like that. So what the people were prosecuting it themselves, and the 1688 Bill of Rights, who would use that because it's a petition, isn't it, really? Whether it's to a local court or to Parliament, they're bringing a case. So when they want to get rid of all these common informers as well, although common informers did carry on into like the early 1920s and 30s, but other things that, weren't getting, no one were doing anything about them, And also you got money for it. There were certain fines you could collect, and apparently the common informer, if they informed on it, they were entitled to the money, and that's why they were doing it, for the money. But they had the right to do it under the proceedings, and that continued, all the way through. But it wasn't a case to Parliament, although that's not, you see, this is the thing. If you do a very, very important, serious, you're not a common informer, are you? Because it's a very, it's not a common crime. It's a very serious, like corrupt and illegal practices aren't, like opening on a Sunday illegally, are they? They're a very serious crime. It's not like a common crime. But then again, the word common informer, it's like the House of Commons, isn't it? If you think, like, did they get the term in the word common informer from the fact that we're informing on common petty offences, like, which were only like a small fine, but they were collecting the money, like, someone opening on a Sunday when it was not lawful, right? You could interpret common informer as that, but if you interpret the word common informer where it originated from and where did they get where did the term come from? It's common informer. Well, if these common informers started appearing, they say, according to the records, so around after the time of, 1688. Well, usually if you petition Parliament, it's the House of Commons. You're petitioning the House of Commons. You can petition either of the houses, but mainly the House of Commons. So if you're informing the House of Commons by petitioning the House of Commons using on something that someone's done wrong, even with a grievance, this committee of grievances, petitions, then if you're a House of Commons informer, isn't that another kind of slang for the term House of Commons informer, a common informer, House of Commons informer? But usually the ironic thing is, when you're informing the House of Commons, it's not a common petty thing. It's going to be something very serious, like, illegal road signage all around England, or the draining of the fens, or whatever it is, So, the very, very important serious cases, but that's the thing. When you've invented the Metropolitan Police and you really want to kind of like, although, the right to petition is all about petitioning the House of Commons, there's something in those petitions that were valuable. The whole fact that Robert Peel was born, 1788, not 1688, the Bill of Rights as well, and all the petitions burned. There are various things. I'm looking into it now, but they're not there, so you can't ask them. But if you wanted to try this, it depends if it was being heard by a jury or not. I mean, a jury, if you go to a court with, corrupt and illegal practices, and you've got evidence, even if you've proved not beyond reasonable doubt, a jury might think that, you could put these clues and evidence and things like that before a court, and they might think, it's a reasonable proposition, Robert Peel burned Parliament down with the King. If they had a motive, the motive was to destroy all the archives and records, all the precedents and knowledge and information of those petitions are useful to the history of England for use in proceedings with Parliament, particularly if he invented the Conservative Party, you know, these political parties want to take precedence over steering politics and not the people having precedence over politics through their petitions. You know, we want the House of Lords to debate this or debate that and get this, particularly the laws for policing. If they've invented a new police force and Robert Peel invented the police force, then the people might want to say, oh, well, you know, maybe we don't think the police force should be run like this or like that, you know. Or maybe we don't need the police force, but well, you need it now. You know, when Parliament burns down, then everyone's like terrorised. So I think a jury could, you know, think, you know, you might say, well, we kind of think this base, you know, we think this is, you know, would they find Robert Peel guilty or even the King for orchestrating, you know, the burning down of Parliament, having cognizance over matters and using privilege to get out of it with corrupt and legal practice? Now, I don't know, a jury can't prosecute the King because, you know, that's different. So therefore, it wouldn't be heard by a jury, but it would have to be heard by Parliament, you know. It would have to be heard in Parliament, by Parliament, or by the House of Commons. And at this point now, from what Andrew Bridgen has written to the police chief, very serious matters that Andrew Bridgen MP has put forward to the police, I am actually... this is really evidence to Andrew Bridgen of the history of England. And what my evidence and proposal to Andrew Bridgen, and actually, well, obviously the Judicial Conduct Investigations Office, because, you know, I want my petitions put back up on 38 degrees, and it's the petitions committee are responsible for that, you know, and they're not giving any support or enforcement. They're not using powers to compel documents. And I've had my evidence stolen in a legal case to Parliament. They've got 3 different cases. There's one over our ancient sites. There's one just over a couple of... there's 2 over local matters to the local council. So that's a local petitions committee in the local council. But still, how can I bring charges over someone for crimes connected with a petition that, you know, Parliament have got cognizance over, the petitions committee? You know, you need like an election petition action for that, but you need a petition. And you see election petitions come under corrupt and legal practices. So, like, you need a petition, because, like, what's happening with the petition needs looking at, which used to all be done under the Tumultuous Petitioning Act. Now, this is beyond just the matters of privilege and immunity. You know, all those matters come up under the right to petition in these special proceedings. You know, you've got excuses, you've got a prosecutor there, you've got these indemnity certificates. The thing is, when you bring the evidence in the first place, you are bringing a case and you are coming with evidence. So, like a police officer does when he pursues criminals to a local court, a magistrate's court, that's where all of the law for the police officers being allowed to do certain things, being made into law, comes from. And we have got that as well in the statutory instruments in the Town and Country Planning Act, all for the use of notices and placement of notices, publishing of notices. And this is 38 degrees, the petition site, you know, publishing things, but they're stealing evidence. This is it, really. You know, but I've now, through all this, and through Bencop.biz and illegal road signage, it has to have been put by councils, and it has to have been of them the police aiding and abetting them. You know, the emergence, the conception of the police is essentially tied to the burning down of Parliament and the burning of all the petitions with the right to petition, and possibly it being planned and orchestrated by not only just the Prime Minister and Chancellor of the Exchequer, but maybe the King. So I'm probably going to have to send this to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., you know, because it's one thing. It is one basis. It's a very, very big and wide-stretching one, but how do these things come about? Where do they originate from? And I know that, we've got crime, we've got criminals, but, all laws are made by Parliament. You can't have criminals and offences without having law, and that's made in Parliament. So when you say, may the first man cast the stone, may the innocent man cast the first stone, the Parliament are casting the legislation. So that's the forecast of who's going to be criminals or not, because who's a thief and who is not a thief. And then you can prosecute all these people, and then they've got a right to, complain and, engage in the lawmaking process. And I think really that, but they also have a right to engage in the upholding of the law enforcement process, as well as the making of the law. And I think that's the thing. There's definitely some political issues around the fact of, Parliament burning down, it being like scaring people, it being a big power move. Who would have the cognizance over those matters? And then you lose all this evidence, which is critically relevant. And there is people tend to behave and act, facts affect people. Like, if you're Sir Robert Peel and, your birthday is 1788, but the famous Bill of Rights is 1688, you've got to, that's something that, affects how you see yourself and how you conduct yourself and how you behave, like names, After all, didn't the butcher get his name John Butcher because he was a butcher? He's from a butchering family. This is the thing, Paul Baker. Why is he called Paul Baker? Well, at some point, someone in his family was a baker, So if you don't say that the word and the name doesn't affect people and the behaviour, it was the behaviour, Now, I believe that some of this crime is coming from the politicians and from the government. And we know that if local councils are actively, in broad daylight, breaking the law, not only with illegal road signage, not only with the removal of people's petition cases and, the police, I think that they're taught and brought up. But the thing is, the police can break the law all the time because it's a full-time job. People who are petitioning Parliament, most definitely, when they're witnesses with evidence they're bringing to Parliament, have got a indemnity. There's no doubt about that, because you can't do it without indemnity. It's difficult. For civil cases, you need to exercise rights. There are certain, trespass, certain things that, if you've got a reasonable excuse, why were you on the property? Because I'm bringing a civil case against the man and I need to gather evidence, or whatever. That is in those proceedings, they raise, excuse, this is the thing with privilege and indemnity, did you have an excuse for, the police officer's got an excuse for kicking the door down, but in law it says that he can use reasonable force and blah, blah, blah. Criminal Damage Act, if he's got a right privilege or interest, this is why those proceedings have, excuse can be taken into account, but then you've got your indemnity if you bring in evidence, or if you've already got an existing case to start with that's bringing evidence, And the thing with these election petitions that are prosecuting the elections is that, people who are actually, they're actually just deciding whether or not the proceedings were legitimate or not, and what the outcome should or shouldn't have been in those elections. And then, if judges or other people, even people with privilege, like, lords and barons, are found to, they've got to answer questions, and they actually, I think, according to that act, they can be found guilty, but they don't. I don't think they get put in prison. It looks like they get removed from office or position, which actually for Lord Hanningfield, I do believe that it was wrong for Lord Hanningfield to be prosecuted in the Crown Court. I don't dispute that. But the CPS kind of like, did they take him to the Crown Court on purpose? I'm not sure, but probably if he'd been prosecuted before and been to prison, they probably, wouldn't have thought any different. But I think that there's not. I don't think there was anything stopping them bringing the case to the High Court in the first place because of it being Lord Hanningfield, or they should have prosecuted him under corrupt and illegal practices of Parliament, really, through that Corrupt and Illegal Practices Act. Surely they should have prosecuted Lord Hanningfield through the Corrupt and Illegal Practices Act, which immediately gets the special proceedings and privilege doesn't matter. Because if the CPS would have thought that, Lord Hanningfield's, claim to money was a corrupt and legal practice, you see, I think they just prosecuted him for some normal offence in a Crown Court with a jury. That's not a corrupt and legal practice prosecution with a special procedure like the election petition rules. You don't want election petition, you want petition. So I think they could have brought it through the High Court. It actually says you can have an election petition or the High Court, actually. And definitely could have used the Supreme Court. I mean, if Supreme Court's meant to be replacing the Lords, then why wouldn't you have him in there? So this is the thing, now whether or not they can be imprisoned or... Well, he did go to prison, didn't he? He served in prison. But then again, they're putting some of these protesters in prison now, and I don't think they should be in prison because of the claim of right in Scotland that says you cannot be in prison for petitioning. So we've got issues. And this is more complicated than the Julian Assange case, for sure. There's a lot of evidence that needs to be taken into account. I think it probably needs an inquiry. You could, rather than just an illegal road signage inquiry in the police, I think now we're looking at the corruption of government. We're looking at the corruption of the establishment. And if the Prime Minister of England could have invented or continued a legacy of the aristocracy and the people in power terrorising the public and escaping any liability because of their privilege and having cognizance over matters, basically being able to plan outside of the thinking of their staff and the people, and controlling the capacity of investigation, because if they invent and control and legislate on the police, then the police cannot act beyond their own capacity and powers. So they're even almost like, it's like he's got the whole world in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands. If you're making the law and shaping the police, there's many police in the House of Lords and now ex-police. So we're looking at, well, it's treason for sure. We're looking at corrupt and illegal practice treason, and then you go into Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s, ancestors and, the shooting of the president, Kennedy and all that. That is one of these controlled incidents, isn't it, where they've got cognizance over events. Who's going to turn up, who's the coroner's going to be, which ambulance, who's on duty at the ambulance, who's that's going to be, if any statements are given, are they going to go missing in the post, and not... no who's going to even know to pursue to ask that. If you don't ask questions, you don't get answers. But now everything's beyond our cognizance, because look at this car on the motorway that went out of control and couldn't stop. The police who pulled him over and who stopped the car eventually didn't have cognizance over the vehicle. They didn't have the capacity of cognizance over electronic Bluetooth communications to and from the vehicle, records of Wi-Fi communications that were made or received by the vehicle. The garage didn't have cognizance over those records. Someone might have had cognizance over deleting them and erasing them and then going on to British Telecom or the internet and erasing them from the internet archives. You're getting into like the Anonymous group, what they do, things like that. You're looking at, you need military, you're looking at, who's doing this to foreign countries, governments. You know, you're looking at military overseas operations grade computer systems. You're looking at Bill Gates. You're looking at, Google. You're looking at Mark Zuckerberg. You're looking at Nick Clegg, how he interacts, ex-deputy prime minister interacts with new platforms. I don't think that there's anyone on the face of this planet who you need. The only person that I can see who's done anything remotely like this is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. when he's suing these big polluting companies. But you need to be, you're suing governments, aren't you? The commercial companies are suing governments because the government harms their fantasy profit, their future potential profit that they just haven't got yet. It's like he's ruining their Christmas presents they've got on their Santa list, It's like their Christmas list. Effectively, BlackRock Vanguard companies are suing governments for spoiling their Santa list, their Christmas list, right? Well, what about our health, our predicted future health? Who's suing the government, right, for treason, And this is where I am with it now, Would Robert F. Kennedy Jr. have been able to sue Robert Peel and the King William IV, for burning down Parliament? Or, you've got 9/11. 9/11 is one of these incidents. I think 9/11 is connected to the burning down of Parliament in so much as the nature of these events. I think that there is you've got to have cognizance over it. You've got to have command over it. You've got to have control over the responses and the people who are going to engage. And you've got to have some amount of immunity or jurisdictive authority, where, this whole Donald Trump thing, was Donald Trump prosecutable, for this and that, although, this is the thing. They're not actually reading the Constitution of America. They're not immune from treason, that's for sure. I know that, or corrupt and legal practices. They've got to tell the truth, and that's the thing in the Corrupt and Legal Practices Act. You're only giving indemnity if you're telling the truth, because then it's. I think that you're breaking the oath, aren't you? I think all these positions that are given, you got the oath, and this is the thing with favors for these fines. A lot of the judges are giving favors for fines. We'll do, we'll reduce, if you pay it within a week, it's only going to be so much, if you admit that you're guilty and so forth, you won't have to go on trial. You can't even have a jury. You can't have a fair trial by a jury even, They're just getting people to confess, and they're giving all these bonuses for confessing, like reduced fines. That's against the oath. And I think when George Galloway went into Parliament, according to law, he says, George Galloway is I do solemnly swear to pledge allegiance to the King, according to law. So help me God. So, but there's some element that you've got to, even though you've got privilege of being protected, you've got to when things are done, managing things has got to be done through law. Surely there's no point having the legislation. Maybe these people have cognised it, that to them, to John, to Boris Johnson, to David Cameron, there is no law. They're anarchists. Maybe the law's for us, not for them. But that wouldn't seem to be the case in the Corrupt Practices Act. But if you want me to, most complaints that people put in, they go, the judge said 57 minutes 53 seconds in, he said, you're insolent. Therefore, he insulted me, and that is, and I wish to give the evidence that, procedure rules 3.57 were not followed, complaining that procedure rules 657, 658 and 659 were violated by the judge at exactly 15 minutes past 8 on Thursday, halfway through proceedings at Leicester Magistrates Court. This is really what the Judicial Conduct Investigations Office type of evidence want. They want, like, John, whatever, or the police officer kicked a door through at 7:15 in pursuit of this case at 5:55, blah, blah, blah. But when you're looking historically, you can't always go on, this is why the police don't prosecute a lot of cases, because they don't think they've got enough evidence to get a conviction, But with a petition to the government, you're meant to, the public are deciding whether they sign it or not, what the public think. And if the House of Parliament won't publish it, then they can't see it. And if 38 Degrees are taking it down, so how do you get people, how can you tell people, how can you inform people? If you make a proposal or an accusation and, half the public back it and support it, then you've got to seriously look at it, being tried. And if a jury can try it and come out with a verdict, I mean, look at Ian Bray. They completely disregarded the law, and they acquitted Ian Bray at Southwark Crown Court with Judge Gregory Perrins. So if a jury can do that, you can get a case up in front of a jury and they can convict someone regardless of exactly what the law says, surely, but when these matters get so serious, it's you don't have a jury, but you do have signatures trying to compel the government to do something about it. I think that, I mean, who else has got, there's a lot of common and petty crime, you got these thief takers, a bit of corruption going on there. You've got, thieves, people who steal things, robbers, but, the more and more money they get, the Peaky Blinders in the fantasy program, they couldn't do anything that they did until they got more organised and had cognizance over it and got more monies. So if you don't have the money, you can't do as big a crime, unless you're like Julian Assange. And that all he did was publish something that an informer from within the government gave anyway. So, there's on the basis that, the establishment don't really like the Bill of Rights, but they had to do it. Other governments wouldn't have done it, under previous kings that have, hanged people, prosecute them in the Star Chamber and so forth. I really think that, this kind of like, if you think the government are goody two-shoes and, the sun shines out of the rear end, and they have our best interests at heart, and so do all the business and companies, then you are severely misled, I think. I think that the government are I think that, it's nice to have a country where people are polite and you can go about your business, and it's not like, some foreign countries where, there's intense poverty and intense disease, and you can't even walk up and down the street. But a lot of the things they're bringing in with the surveillance are threatening to take privacy and the presumption of innocence away from us. I think the government have always been a formidable force. I think that some of these characters who go into government and the monarchs are not as clean cut as we would be led to believe. Not all charity gigs, and Prince William and his football, and Prince Harry, he's gone to war and he's killed people. I think we're dealing with very, very capable and diabolically devious people who have got some groups going, within the House of Lords, these, like this, the MP for Rochdale, who mysteriously just passed away, and George Galloway ended up getting elected. He was a police and crime commissioner for Manchester. Instances like that, has he gone up in smoke? Has he gone on witness protection? Poof, what happened to that guy, police officer at Wallasey, with that red pickup truck case? that mad crazy incident when I put the Sir Peter Fahey BentCop.biz advert in the Manchester Evening News, which has vanished from my computer, and Manchester Evening News claim they don't even have a copy of it, which I don't believe that, because they have digital copies of every newspaper, because this London Evening Standard, if it has digital, every newspaper that has to put to press has got to be printed from a digital copy, right? So, I mean, I could subpoena that Manchester Evening News advert, because I know they've got digital copies of it, because, the London Evening Standard supply a full digital version of every page that's ever been out in the newspaper, because that's what they printed it from. So they're lying if they don't have the records. I think they've got to keep them for legal cases such as defamation cases with night lawyers. If there's a defamation case, then the court will need evidence of the newspaper that was printed, and they will have to have the records for that. So the Manchester Evening News are just lying. I think I'm going to have to subpoena that evidence as well, actually, because it went missing from my computer mysteriously, and all records vanished. So could probably do with getting that. In fact, that's evidence. That is evidence that I published something and there was a police terrorist response, an incident generated, and a police officer went poof, up in smoke, vanished. I think that there's some sort of witness protection program going. They can make people vanish, possibly even Prince Philip and the Queen. I can't prove that. We're getting a little bit. I think I'm stretching the boundaries a bit now, but I think that Sir Robert Peel and King William IV plotted the burning of Parliament and orchestrated it. They orchestrated it and had cognizance over it, privilege and control of a brand newly formed Met Police Force. Therefore, I believe the existence of the Met Police Force as the police, replacing the public getting private police thief takers and bringing criminal proceedings themselves, I think is intimately connected with the burning of all the petitions and the denial of the right to petition and the subversion of the right to petition. It's all tied into those events and circumstances around the burning of Parliament. And if you deny that, then you got to be you're just in denial. It wasn't just a series of unfortunate events, and I think that they established a secret branch, not like 77th Brigade, Battalion, 77th Brigade. That they used during COVID. They've got themselves a little political terrorist group that likes to do little incidents now and again and get them in the newspaper, and it's beyond the cognizance of us to prove at the moment. Only in so much as in broad daylight. It's almost like the song "Burning Down the House," that Tom Jones did a cover of, close enough but not too far, baby, you know where you are. Well, that's almost like the woman. I mean, why was Sir Tom Jones given an award and a reward for that? That it definitely was, in connection with that song, to Tom Jones, right? For doing a cover version of Burning Down the House. They must have liked that song or seen something in it, that close enough but not too far, baby, you know where you are. Well, it's like, the woman, she knows where she is if she works in the Houses of Parliament and locks it up. She's close enough when she stood right on the floor that's heating up because there's a fire underneath it, but she doesn't quite realise that it's they'll think place is about to go up in smoke. It seems a bit warm, this floor, there's a bit of smoke coming off it, it's a bit strange. Oh well, not to worry about it. It unbelievable. I'd like to have exactly seen what happened there and then, whether someone said, oh, don't worry about it, come on, let's go, or whether, whether they think the floor's warm and the smoke coming up, why don't you go under and check it? It seems a very strange story. If Peel directed that clerk to go put the baubles under, then I think in a court, even if you could prove he did or did not plan it, if it was his idea, but who decided they were going to get rid of them? Oh, if it wasn't for Robert Peel saying, I think we'll get rid of those baubles today, those wooden counting baubles, there's like 2 full cartloads of them. Clark, go put them under Parliament, and get them burning. And then, it already feels quite warm under there when it's time to go, but no one seems to go and check. How stupid do you have to be? Put it this way, if that happened now, and it was Boris Johnson who told the clerk to go burn the things in the Parliament, he would never, ever, ever get away with that. He would never get away with it. It's amazing the police now believe, why aren't the police? Well, I think the police are doing it. They're not sat in the police station, plotting a crime, but they've got a support unit, and they come to an understanding, a unofficial, consensual understanding between a entity that is able to trigger these events. And they like it because it keeps the public. You need when these terrorist incidents happen, then the public cry out for more police. They cry for help. They cry out for more police, for more help, for more protection, and that's what these incidents are designed for, to terrorize. So, I don't know which exact officers. There's probably some. How it works, I don't know for sure, but it works along the lines of how Parliament was burned down. That's how it works. Someone has cognizance over events that unfold. Now, whether it's just through lying, how can you get away with that? Put it this way, how can you be the Chancellor of the Exchequer? You're the one who says it's time to burn these things. You're the one who instructs the clerk. And then, no one seems to suspect anything, and then everything burns down, and then you don't get prosecuted. It was just deemed to be an accident. Well, I think that's what's happening now. This car is going out of control, and his accelerator pedal won't stop, but, it's just deemed to be an accident. Oh, the car just malfunctioned. People haven't got the cognizance to prove or work out how it's happening. Well, they have, but it's been obstructed. It's been prevented. The police aren't having the capacity. That's it. That's the model. I mean, how can I explain it any more than that? And that will be the case for Robert F. Kennedy's relatives who got shot. I don't know whether or not Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He definitely was upset about it. He was on a little. I don't know whether he's had a nod or a wink or whatever, but he seems to be pursuing wanting to find out what happened. But they're triggering these events all the time now. Railway signal failure, 250 people die in India. They've even got technology for causing earthquakes. Now, the explosion of the technology, of the money, and when King Charles stands up, in front of the World Health Organization, or the WEF, the World Economic Forum, and he says, "We're military-style campaign with trillions at their disposal, beyond leaders coming from the global private sector." Well, if that's got to be it, but I don't think it's beyond leaders, because the thing is, who they are. This is the cork of this. He is a leader because he's the king, right? Beyond leaders. Well, I think what he means is beyond all the other opposition and the people working in the departments and so forth, I think that, so if you got King William IV, and you if he was stood up, making a speech saying, the military-style campaign, burning down of Parliament, beyond leaders with trillions at their disposal. Well, those trillions of counting beads, is that, were they counting trillions with those counting beads or whatever they had, 2 cartloads of counting beads, so there were these trillions at their disposal. This is it. It definitely is a military-style campaign outside the capacity of most people, mainly because they can get away with lying, and people refuse to suspect them. Look at that guy who was driving the car in this Jeff Buys Cars interview for this incident on the motorway the other day. You don't know what happened because there's no way to prove there was no malfunction found. There was no malfunction found or proved, and not even when the battery was going funny. So the whole incident could have been a joyride for fun, for a thrill. And the only reason that he's not convicted is on his own statement. So if you went joyriding with the Houses of Parliament, right, and there's no way to prove anything only on someone's statement of whether they did have or didn't have the intention to do it, regardless of what everyone was looking straight at it as it happened, it's that thing of like Prince Philip standing on Jeremy Corbyn's foot, isn't it? Jeremy Corbyn's there in the room, Prince Philip walks into him and treads on his foot, and he goes, "Oh, and then Jeremy Corbyn goes, "Oh, I'm sorry about that." Well, did Philip, stamp on his foot? And Daddy clocked him, and he thought, "Oh, this is Liz Corbyn there. Watch this. I'll go position myself, and I'll go back into him, and I'll stand on his foot, and then get him to say sorry to me, Oh, yes, Mr. Corbyn, we know all about you." "Oh, do you? Do you know all about the House of Parliament being burned down?" "Well, yes, everyone knows about it, but it was an unfortunate incident. That wasn't an accident." "Well, no, the clerk went straight into Parliament and piled it up with wood and set it on fire." He was instructed to do that by the Prime Minister or the Chancellor of the Exchequer, by Sir Robert Peel, who started the police force. No, but he didn't have no idea that would happen. Yes, but he commanded it. So mote it be. So mote it be. No, but I didn't know that would cause Parliament to burn down, though. It's like Flashpoint, isn't it? On Mick Jagger, Flashpoint. That whole thing with Jimi Hendrix. What can you say to Andrew Bridgen? What can you say to Andrew Bridgen, right? If Boris Johnson, right, told the Clerk of Parliament to take 2 full carts of wooden counting beads and burn them in the burners underneath Parliament, and then, whoever it is, Angela Rayner, Parliament's ready to close, and Rayner's one of the last people out, and then she says, to one of the caretakers on the way out, "The floor feels a bit warm, doesn't it? It's kind of, isn't that a bit of smoke coming up there? It feels a bit toasty. Is there something wrong here? Should you go investigate it?" And Angela Rayner, and then they go, "Oh, no, we won't bother. Let's just lock it up, and there's nothing wrong here." You tell me, Andrew Bridgen, right? Is that not professional? There's professional negligence, and there is, if that does not result in a prosecution and conviction for treason, then there is some severe defects in the staff of Parliament, and someone is getting away with murder. Never mind Jack the Ripper. We've got King Rippers. We've got King Rippers going on. I mean, this is, David Cameron MP now, but he's being made into Lord Cameron now. He doesn't get punished for lying about the driving licenses. and the speed limits, he gets awarded, commended. He gets decorated. He gets decorated for it. Parliament needs some decorating, after it's been burned down. But Cameron gets decorated. And that was following my complaints to the Judicial Conduct Investigation Office when David Cameron gets decorated. So it's a lost cause. What else do you need? Either they've got people doing things when they blatantly don't know what they're doing. At what point is a clerk who sets a fire going? At what point did he not burn down the Houses of Parliament? At what point does a police officer kick in the door in? So he didn't break the door down. At what point does the police and council setting up illegal road signage all around in England not set up illegal road signage all around England? And how is that not a corrupt and illegal practice? I say to Andrew Bridgen MP and to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and to the Judicial Conduct Investigations Office, at what point, at what point is an apple not an apple? At what point is... It's like the Emperor's New Clothes. I think what we've got is a case of the Emperor's New Clothes. It's like, it's with that, I don't know if the guy in the car on the motorway, we don't know if he was telling the truth. It's 50-50 really. I mean, he could have just gone for it could have been. It's not impossible for it to have been a joyride. So it was possible for him to just go for a mad thrill with balls of steel. That could have happened because they haven't disproved that yet. The thing is, unless they get evidence, they haven't disproved it. But it's on his statement. But if they believe him, then they're going to prosecute. But there's people on this planet in this country who've done a lot worse than that, and they wanted to prosecute them. So, and then you've got the fact that they don't seem to. They've been set up to not have the ability or interest to investigate the vehicle properly. Now, that's legislation of government. The government have legislated on the police force to not actually investigate electric vehicles. And they've not made any regulations for Elon Musk or anyone to fit devices that monitor all communications or any records of these communications between vehicles. And they're wanting to put more of these vehicles out on the roads. And they've even forced us into some of them now. So many people have them. So they're under terrorist threat. Everyone's scared now that their car could be next if they don't obey. Obedience. So we've got who has been forcing them into these cars and making them be put in them? Well, the government, because they're the main ones taking them off them. It's like literally the government, like it's almost like slavery, putting you back in chains, like they're the ones who can't, the mayor can't, and the government have been legislating, they've been doing deals, favours to get you out of those other mechanical cars, and now they're under remote control, but we can't see who, and we don't even suspect anyone. It's such a diabolical and devious situation that it's so strategically corrupt and planned, just like the food. It couldn't have been more strategically calculated than the food. What's happened to us all? Those microbiomes are all done, and we've all got diabetes, and this and that, because of the over a long period of time, a long-term strategic plan where someone had cognizance over it, and everyone's vitamin D levels going through the bottom of the floor, and this is it. You need there's a mastermind behind it. It's a master plan It's like in Noel Gallagher's song, the master plan. There are master plans being unfolded by these people. And it ain't just burning down Parliament. There's a master plan for the whole food supply. The master plan for everyone, what vehicles people are going to be in. And it's being tweaked and adjusted by Parliament. And the only thing that makes it criminal is if they planned it. And they're planning it so they can get control over people and have more control, but not the type of control that you and me are led to believe. That they've got a extra, not extraterrestrial. That's off planet. They've got means of control which are secret. It's like the Secrets Act. There's an act of law called the Secrets Act. They've got secrets, and they're doing. They believe in terrorism. They believe in it. Yet they're accusing all these other countries and people of doing it. Yet burning down Parliament is terrorism. Putting up illegal road signage is terrorism. It is corrupt and illegal practices and terrorism. It's causing incidents. It's causing people to break the law. Something needs to be done. And if you can't have a test case for that burning down of Parliament with Sir Robert Peel and the King, there are probably letters that you can subpoena. There are probably archives, letters, other things that were happening when you can piece it together. This is the thing. I don't think you need to piece it together too much with that story. There's not too much to piece together with it. It's just, all you need is a motive. And I think the motive is getting rid of the public's engagement in bringing criminal prosecutions and bringing it under one entity, the police, and destroying all of the petitions, the cases that set precedent over cases to the House of Commons, and a bit of terrorism as well, scare the people. And they had absolute cognizance over it and immunity. So it's so obvious. It's too obvious. And then Peel's birthday, it's like blow out your candles, Peel. It's your birthday, 1688, Bill of Rights, 1688. And they even invented the Conservative Party. I now believe, this is my opinion, that the Conservative Party and the police force together with Robert Peel are the origin of this organised terrorism. And it likely has always been the case, right back to the 1640s, I think Bedford was poisoned, to be honest, to be made ill. But I just think that it's the panache of the royals, I just think that it's what else? Villains, Villiers, the Duke of Buckingham, Villiers, he's a character, he's a villain, Villiers, but then you get organised villains. It's, I think that, in our terms now, hanging people and chopping their heads off is, we don't do it. It's not good. Anyone who would want to set up to set up a legal system where you do that to people in today's terms, it is a terrible affair. But that was the official court system, I think that we've got just as bad criminals, if not worse, in the government than at large in public. These people are actually, you can't have a crime without naming it. Name the crime, This is not a bad thing until we say so, write it down on paper. Now you're doing a bad thing. Robbing people's, taking candy from a baby is not bad until it's theft. Hanging people's not bad until, that's illegal. They're the ones who write things down on bits of paper that's right or wrong. And I think that they are doing plenty of things that are wrong, which a lot of people regard as, unacceptable. And they don't want to be, instead they want to, pop up at the candy, It's Charles, I've got a charity, you've got the Archbishop of Canterbury popping up. I'm not saying that it's the Archbishop of Canterbury himself who's done it, but there are dark figures, and some people are aiding and abetting on them, and they're getting away with it. And the police's job is, in terms of everyone else, daily crime that they're breaking the law on a daily basis, and it's just everyone. It's just how you see it. Everyone's like looking at it, going, "Oh, that's perfectly acceptable." That you've got a reason. Therefore, I'm the king. I want to burn down Parliament, take all your rights away from you, and get you all under a new police force. It's fair enough. You're the king. You can do what you want. It's perfectly acceptable. And this is it. But a lot of the difference is that these people, it gets labelled. They label it accident, and that's the thing. They label it accidental. But it's only accidental on 2 points. One is intent, which is in their mind, like with that car incident, and the other is well, it's intent. It was an accident. Or that's it. It was an accident. How do you prove that? Well, this is the thing. How can you prove? You don't accidentally decide that you're going to burn all Italian, two wooden cartloads Italian apparatus from Parliament. You don't accidentally go tell the clerk to set up the fire and burn them. And you don't accidentally. Well, the only accident in it was the woman who was what the floor's a bit warm. If that's what happened, we don't know exactly. This is just the accounts. She failed to check, but did someone already know her character and her personality and what her likely response was? We don't have the full accounts of questioning what happened. Did another person walk past and say, "Oh no, it'll be all right. Come on, like whatever." We don't have the full accounts. And regardless of whether she did report it or not, and did end up getting the fire put out so it all didn't get burnt down, that's got nothing to do with it being started, not a fire starter. Have other people thought about this? Have other people looked into it? You look at that song by, what happened to Keith? What happened to the Prodigy singer? With his fire starter song, he ended up he had a pub, didn't he? He ended up committing suicide, didn't he? If we can get people to agree or prove that that burning of Parliament was no accident, then you're looking at the person who formed the police force, the Met Police, and the Conservative Party being a major terrorist in history. And where did he get his craft from? Is it an aristocracy? This is one of the dark arts of the aristocracy that they passed down. It's been not indicted into. It was been put through induction. Into through the ceremony. This is it. The road signage was put up all around England unlawfully. It's not. If it was accidental and insignificant, but we're talking about in connection with specific special sites where they find people a lot, and the police go there for a reason to get loads of fines out of people, and it's set up in a certain misleading psychological way where it's very deceptive, I think on purpose, which you can demonstrate. Look at how's Cameron got away with that driving licenses stunt. With the van speed limit on the dual carriageway, he's got away with that. How are London Council getting away with scrubbing those petition paintings off when they're not supposed to? No one's prosecuting them. But yet they're wanting more and more and more and more technology and more surveillance and more cameras. But there are things already that we've got. We've got cameras. We've filmed councils breaking the law. Nothing's been done. There's no point having more and more cameras if nothing's going to be done about it. That they're either above the law while the police is not choosing to act. I don't know why that is. This is where I am with it all at the moment. And I think the whole strategically long-term food strategy, I think, is a corker. I don't know what you want to put this under as a label or deal it with all separate things, but I think I think there are masterminds behind it because the Conservative Party, the police, the Prime Minister, it's very, very, very corrupt terrorism, and it's just that people are getting along with their daily life, like potatoes, and just like they're in their own little world. There are big sharks out there. We're all being forced into these electric cars now. Hey, look, now that we're all in them, now they're threatening us. You better behave, or yours could be next. Now half the population's in electric cars. Now you all better behave because you never know. And then everyone will be scared and will want to get into on the bus or train. But then then you got these signal failures. It's terrorism. It's not an accident. I think they're getting away with it mainly because the majority of these things are being passed off as an accident, but the illegal road signage wasn't accidental. The council aren't illegally removing things accidentally. Parliament, it was no accident. Parliament burning down was no accident. That's for sure. He'd formed the police, the Met Police, and they didn't want the public to be the ones who were dealing with the prosecutions. They wanted it all to be under one body. And what's happened? What was the fruits of that? Well, we've got even more incidents now, and they're actually using them to get more and more control and to actually frighten us more and more. But I think they were doing it the whole time. I think I think Bedford getting ill. I think it falls under this whole kind of like age-old poisoning people and all that. And I think that aristocracy, people high up, have always been who has the knowledge about the properties of these different compounds and chemicals, other than people, particularly when you get under royal appointment, and then you're the first to know about it because and the universities and the professors and so forth. That's my opinion on it. I do think that Robert Peel and the King were. I think that they orchestrated burning down of Parliament for a terrorist move, because London they'd already had the Great Fire of London, so I think that they'd already had like something like that happen before,